All right, guys, this is going to be another episode of the cedar tabletop build. Some of you may already know, but I've been working on this thing here. I milled the wood and I've put it together. I milled the wood, dried it, put it together, and this is where we are so far on this tabletop build for a island. Now this island's going into a hunting camp, and the guy wants it to be rustic, but yet usable and finished. And so I just yesterday put a layer of epoxy on this thing. It hadn't completely cured yet, so I'm not wanting to go to sanding or do anything else on it just yet. But what I've got to have is he wants a graphic in the middle of this thing to represent the hunting club, camp, whatever you want to call it, of where this thing's going to be. And so the plan is that somewhere in this general area, in the center of this table, which is it's going to be a little off-centered with the boards because of the way that this is put together. But somewhere in the center of this table, we're going to cordon off a little area just big enough for this graphic. And I'm going to burn the graphic into the tabletop. And once I get it burned into the tabletop, I'm going to do another batch of epoxy with some blue pigment in it. And I'm going to pour that so that you can see the creek that runs through the property and the name of the property or the farm or whatever in blue, and then sand that down, get that back like it needs to be, and then finish it out with a coat over the top to seal everything in. So today what I'm going to be doing is, for those of you that maybe don't know how to design something in LightBurn or feel nervous about LightBurn and how it works, I'm just going to walk you through how I'm going to be doing this and the steps that I'm taking. And that'll give you an idea of a way that works. It might not be the best way, but it'll give you an idea of a way that works. So if you want to see how I'm going to build this file as far as this creek and everything, stick around for a few minutes. I'm going to get over to the computer, and I'm going to use the camera on the computer to kind of walk you through the process that I use to come up with the graphic for this. So stick around. Alright guys, here's to hoping that this works. I'm going to adjust my monitor a little bit so you're not looking at the roof so much. I'm using a free software, so this could get a little buggy. It's not really something I budgeted for, so I'm having to use a free version. But I'm going to start out right here and just kind of throw you what the steps that I'm going to use. I kind of got started on this, and then I thought about it and thought I'd make a video, so I'm going to cut out a lot of the looking for this location. But the way that I'm going to get my cut and get my graphic for the creek, the easiest way that I've found is I use our friend Google Maps and find the property and locate it on the map, make sure I'm in the right location. And then once you do that, you'll have this view. Well, if you change the view to, you can change it to any of them, but you know, you got the terrain here. If you wanted, if whatever the image you had, you wanted to have the terrain lines or whatnot in there and the altitude, so to speak, you could do that. Or you can just save this image the way it is, or you can use the one from traffic, which is the street view. A lot of times I'll play with the different, let me move this little guy here out of the way, it's interfering with my changing of my layers there. But a lot of times I'll take and just figure out which one works best, which one looks best, and go from there. But this is your standard Google map right here. This is without the terrain turned on, and as you can see, there's nothing really on the creek banks. You have to be a little careful with these names. When you zoom in or you zoom out, sometimes they'll move around and they may get to where they interfere with the body of water that you're wanting to get the graphic from. And what I use to get this is basically you're going to hit either Control or FN, whatever the function is on your computer, and do a screenshot. Once you do that screenshot, just open up Paint. You know, Paint comes with any Windows machine, and you paste that picture into Paint here, and you can see it's exactly what you saw on the screen. So then you would go over here to File and save that thing as a JPEG. And when you save it as a JPEG, I usually save it in my downloads folder or somewhere like that. If you've got a customer folder, you can put it there if you want. But I don't keep these things, so I just put them on my download so I can purge them periodically. Once you do that, once you've got your map, you've got it, the image saved that you want, you can close all of this. And I'll go in, before I do anything with it, I'll go in and I'm going to go and look at my downloads folder, which is where I stuck that thing. And I'm going to pull that picture up. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to crop out anything that I don't really need. You can do this later if you want, but sometimes it seems to me it's just a little more convenient for me to just go ahead and chop that out here, so when I get into my next step I don't have to fool with it. So I'm going to take all of that out. I'm going to pull it down to about right here because I don't want the name of the creek in my image. I want this full creek here, maybe a little bit of these little streams, but that's really all I want is this main stream right here. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to save that, and so that way the picture is saved the way that I want it. And why did my little camera guy in the bottom disappear? Huh, there I am. I'm back. Well, that's odd. But anyway, the next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to use Photoshop because I have Photoshop. I pay for it and it's pretty handy for stuff like this. I've got it moved into Photoshop, and there's a bunch of different ways you can do this. Like I said, the goal here for me is to simply get the shape of this creek because I'm going to burn it with the laser. And the easiest, simplest, fastest way that I have found is by taking the image, opening it in Photoshop, and right here you got your little bucket tool. Select black. Make sure you've got as black as you can get selected. And what you're going to do is, if you zoom in a little bit, makes this a little bit easier, is you're basically going to dump black paint in the creek or in the river or whatever it is. Google doesn't use black in their maps, so, and like with this one, see it's kind of thin, so it's not gonna want to burn really well that way. But the more paint you dump, I'm going to do 2 more dumps in this one. 1, 2. It's going to make that line a little thicker. Get on this side. 1, 2. And I've got to go up. And so now, if you look, let me get it to where it'll fit on my screen here. The line's gotten a little thicker. So you can continually dump paint in here. And as you do, it's going to make that line a little more defined before you burn, give you a little more definition in your image. I've got one little spot right down here at the bottom where this road is that crosses over, and I don't want that in my image. So one thing that you can do is use the brush and go in and draw you a line. So I'm going to change my brush over here to a very small brush, and then I'm going to need to zoom in because I can't quite tell where I'm at there. So I'm going to zoom that in, and you can, like I said, I could have done this in the beginning, but I'm just going to take it and just dab me a little bridge across that so that it's a continual image all the way through. Alright, and go back to fit on screen. Now the next step, this ought to be pretty easy, is you just go up here to your tools, select color range. The only thing in this photo that's going to be black should be the river. So when I hit OK, it's going to select. You can see it's trying to pick up something else down here in the bottom. I'm not sure why that's happening, but we're just going to go ahead. I've got a little bit of the name of the town here that's been selected, but I'm not going to concern myself with that. The next step is go up here to layer, new, and I'm going to do a new layer by cut because I want to pull that black off of that layer and use it on a new layer, because the whole purpose of doing that, well, if I can get this to cooperate, the whole purpose of doing that is when this layer here goes away, so does all that busy stuff that was in the background that I don't want. And so then all you got to do is delete that layer. Oh, wrong layer, guys. Let's undo that. This little window down here is really messing with me where that camera is. So let me select the appropriate layer, unlock it, then delete. Okay, and that should leave you with very little extra stuff. All right, come here. My white bucket. All right, and you can dump white in this background here, and you can see that I hit it too many times there. And you can see that some of that font and stuff from earlier was kind of hanging in there. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. Knock that out of my graphic. So now I go back to my bucket and fill those holes in, which should be good. Same process, select color range. Go back to this guy. Okay. Alright, so I'm not seeing anything else extra selected. So new layer. My computer's being a little slow with this program running in the background. And so basically I did the same thing. I got now I've got that white color is in this layer here. So I'm just going to delete that too and be done with that. So now I've got everything removed. I've got my PNG like I want it, and I can export as a PNG and drop that thing down in here and hit save and replace it. So there you have it. Now when you go to LightBurn, you should have a good clean file to work with. So we'll move over to LightBurn. Alright guys, first thing to do is to drag in our new graphic that we have built. And I'm wanting to orient this thing a little different than the way it's currently sitting. So I am going to rotate it around here like so. That's about where I want this thing to sit. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to right click, and if you've never used the trace function in LightBurn, it is awesome. I'm going to trace the image. It's going to throw the image up, and it's basically going to outline it for you with a line and convert it over into a burn. So I'm going to hit OK, and that's going to make basically just a burn pattern for this graphic. So I'm going to slide that, make it a little bigger, because for this project, this is going to be about a 15-inch wide line there. And so once I get that done, I need to add some text. Since we're going with filling this with epoxy, I'm going to need some text that's going to take the epoxy pretty good. And so I'm going to go with copper black. And I'm going to type that in. And I'm going to need that in uppercase so that I'll have bigger letters to fill with the epoxy just to give me that look. So I'm going to go ahead and engage the uppercase letters. And then just select everything by dragging a box with this arrow around all of it and align them and get it to where I want them. As far as centered, I probably need to move that down first. Let me get that closer to the graphic first, and then let me redo that. That way I know it's everything's centered up. But that is the graphic as I have designed it, and I went from Google Maps to get the shape and then brought it in. Like I said, maybe it's not the best way, there may be a better way, but if you have Photoshop, you have LightBurn, and you have access to Google Maps, this works. And I've used it on a lot of different rivers and things that I've done, and sometimes it goes a little smoother than others, and the more you do it, the easier it gets. So hopefully that'll work for you. And I'm going to burn this thing and just kind of show you what it turns out to be when we get there. Alright guys, you also get to see my brand new sander I got. I've been using that little jitterbug sander, but for this epoxy I decided to go get this thing because the only higher grit sandpaper I could find fit these. So I got me a new sander. So this will actually be the first try of this thing. Well, Well, it's a good thing that was a scrap piece of wood. Didn't take into consideration I was holding on the other side of the little crack in it. So let's start over on this. Not bad. Gonna need to do some training on that sander. Not really used to that. Wound up getting, I don't know if you can see this, but got a pretty good little line here. I'm gonna call that a good, that's a 16th or maybe even up to an 1/8 on the line. The text seems to have filled a little bit better. We've got at least an 1/8 of an inch, but I think that's going to be more than adequate to hold our epoxy. So one thing I could do to test that theory is I can take some wood glue and try that and see what happens. Oh, wait a minute, better yet. Ha! I got some blue water-based paint. It's probably going to turn the whole thing blue, but this will be a little more realistic anyway. So I'm gonna play with that for a second. To that of my water-based paint, it will house enough of the, especially because you got to keep in mind this thing's going to be big. These letters, this whole thing is going to be 16 inches wide. So these letters will be much larger and much more pronounced on what we're doing. But you can see that it did retain, even squeegeeing it, it retained enough of the pigment that would make that visible in the wood. So I'm going to call this a plan. I'm going to say that hopefully, if all goes well with the burn, I'm going to cut some little feet and actually glue them to the top of the table to stabilize it during the burn. I used the preview function in LightBurn and have determined that this is going to be nearly a 4-hour burn. So I'm going to have to babysit this thing and make sure nothing really catastrophic happens. I will be servicing and cleaning my laser prior to beginning this project, just to keep any hiccups from happening, because I don't want to go mess up my nice table in an attempt to do this. But that's kind of what we're aiming for. So if you'll check back with me in a few days, maybe we'll be made it to the point to where we've actually put this on the tabletop and moving forward with it. So thank you and have a good day.